Joining me from Caracas is the Venezuelan Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jorge Arreaza. Thank you for coming on the show, Your Excellency. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, Richard. My pleasure, my honor to be here.
We're hearing from Western countries especially that, the election was somehow illegitimate, and they were actually saying this before it even took place. What is your response to those criticisms?
Oh, we are used to it. They're having this kind of complaints even in advance since 2017. They decided that the opposition in Venezuela, the bourgeois opposition, should take power in Venezuela because maybe they are alike to the European elite and to the elite in the United States. So they have tried by all means to make this happen. They have tried to not recognize the elections, to impose a fake government, to be behind the coup attempts, to kill the president. So it's maybe a natural reaction because we are building a new way of organizing our society. We have a lot of natural resources, oil, gas, and minerals, and they decided that there cannot be a socialist revolution in Venezuela, but our people decided that there will be a socialist revolution in Venezuela, and we keep on winning political spaces. And last Sunday's election was a very good election. It was an heroic victory for the Venezuelans, whom, in spite of the sanctions, of the lack of fuel, of so many obstacles, went to the ballots and they elected their new National Assembly.
How do you respond to the critics who say that even though your party got the majority of the votes, the overwhelming majority, 68%, that the voter turnout was low? It was around 31%. We're also in the middle of a pandemic, so...
Yeah. We are in the middle of a pandemic. There is lack of fuel in Venezuela. We have been under aggression. The opposition boycotted the election. The U.S. government says that if you cannot vote in an illegitimate election, and of course, it's elections for the members of parliament. It's not the same as presidential elections. Each election in Venezuela is different. And for instance, in 2005, for the elections for the National Assembly, the turnout was 25%. And there was no aggression, there was gasoline, there was no obstacles, and Washington was not interfering. So that's why I say this has been heroic, because in spite of all these circumstances, the Venezuelan people have regained the National Assembly. New deputies have been elected, and we are going to have a legislative power back in Venezuela.
What do you expect to see from the opposition next? Because the entire premise of Guaido's supposed legitimacy was that he was the head of the National Assembly. He's not the head anymore. So where are they going to draw this legitimacy from now? Because the UK and the US have said that they will continue to regard him as the president of Venezuela, which is,
Well, you know that today I read a statement or an interview, I believe, from Enrique Capriles, who used to be one of the most important politicians in the opposition. And he states that there is no leadership in the opposition. There is no leader. And he's right. They are fractured, they are divided, they did things wrong, they submitted themselves to Washington. So now they have no future the way that they have been behaving. So I don't really know what can happen but that's their own issues, their own thing. So let them discuss and let's see if they can get united, or if they finally divide absolutely. That's none of our business. But what is going to happen is that next January the 5th, we will have a new National Assembly in Venezuela. And I am surprised that you can still that you remember the name of this diputado, of Mr. Guaido, because most of the Venezuelans, they had a lot of trouble to learn how to write his name. And now they have forgotten how to write it. So that's the reality.
Yeah, it's quite funny how they're promoting someone that Venezuelans don't even know. I mean, it's absurd. I wanted to ask you about Ivan Duque, the Colombian president. He actually blocked a plane from leaving over Colombian airspace from Venezuela back to Mexico, a plane full of international observers. You know, they complain about lack of legitimacy and transparency, but then they're also blocking international observers. I mean, what do you make of that?
Yes, if it were not so delicate and grave, we could say it's a childish behavior, but we're used to it in Venezuela. The thing is that yesterday, more than 200 of the over 300 observers that came for the elections had to suffer this small expression of the blockade against Venezuela. So in spite of the fact that the national authorities of Venezuela had the overflight permission a week ago, when the plane was about to take off, they decided that they canceled this authorization. So it's, you know, in Colombia, the mercenaries have been trained and with the support of the government to attack Venezuela. Mercenaries from Venezuela, you know, there's defected militaries and mercenaries from the United States, former Green Berets that trained in Colombia. They tried to come to Venezuela and to kill the president and kill other political leaders. There are still many mercenaries in Colombia being trained to attack Venezuela. They have tried to block us. We have to understand that this fellow Duque is not the president of Colombia. He's just a man that works for the elite in the United States. No, it's like Donald Trump was the president of a big corporation and the CEO, and this was one of the main executives. And him and Bolsonaro and others and Macri, at some point, they can be promoted if they attack, if they try to isolate, if they try to kill the Venezuelan project. So we are used to it, but we have learned to have strategic patience. The peoples of Argentina, Mexico, and I am sure of Chile, of Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil will change these governments and everything will come where it should be.
So we heard reports that President Maduro, he changed the location of where he went to vote because of an alleged assassination attempt. Could you tell us what you know so far about that?
No, that's mere speculation. But President Maduro changes sometimes his routines in order to avoid anything. But it's a preventive protocol of there's nothing specific about this case. It's just security measures, normal security.
Right, because I wasn't sure if it's just hearsay, if they're trying to portray the security as being lacking or something like that. So I want to move over to the United States. What do you expect to see from the incoming Biden administration? How do you think the relationship is going to be between Venezuela and the United States in January?
Well, you know, we've been 22 years in power, and we've learned that the imperialist government of the United States, the system of the United States is one, despite who is ruling and which party is in the White House. So we don't have very high expectations. There are some differences. Maybe it's formal, right? But the thing is, if the United States elite wants to rectify and wants to have better relations with Venezuela, we are opened. We even try to have dialogue with Mr. Trump. It happened to some extent, but not as we expected. Let's see if there is a better opportunity with Biden. But it's not something that changes the Venezuelan history. If they want, we want. If they don't want, we will prevail.
Do you expect to see any kind of détente at all, or do you think it's going to be a continuation of this imperialist aggression on Iran, on Venezuela, and attempting to take over the oil, the energy sector, and curb Venezuela's military?
The imperialism has its goals, its objectives, and they are always there. Some government can try to change tactics, but the strategic path is already designed. It was designed 200 years ago. And we don't expect different behavior from the United States. But if we are surprised and they change because they feel the pressure of their own people, all these demonstrations, and they need to give some signals in the world, we will receive any move how it should be. But if they behave like they have until now, it's in our plan. So we will continue going forward in spite of the fact of who is in the White House.
So we've seen a real friendship and alliance developing between Iran and Venezuela. Iran recently sent another shipment of fuel tankers to Venezuela. What kind of further cooperation can we expect to see between the two countries?
We've had a great relationship with Iran since 2003, and it's been getting even more closer and more integral, because we are advancing in new sectors that we hadn't before. And we should thank Mr. Trump for these last steps that we have taken, because we've come even more together because of the aggression against Iran and against Venezuela at the same time. So this is a relationship that is going to grow, it's going to expand, and we are very honored of having this kind of relation with Iran.
What do you see in regards to the economic situation, COVID-19, these brutal sanctions, the maximum pressure campaign? Because we're seeing it in Venezuela, we're seeing it in my country, in Syria, we're seeing this in Iran, and it's really hurting the civilian population. So, I mean, where do we go from here especially in this bloc of anti-imperialist countries?
Yes, I believe that this is a time when the world is transforming. We are building a multipolar world. And this is a fact. I mean, the empire of imperialism is not only the United States government and elite, it's also elites in Europe. You have suffered of this and other places. It's this group of corporations taking decisions for the governments. And we are sure that this is going to change. The multipolar world is being born, and it's a matter of us being attacked or being marginalized, getting together. We are the real power in the world. Is in the South, is the countries that want to be free, the peoples that want to be free. So it's a matter of coordination, a matter of having the capacity of planning together, of executing plans together, that we can make this world more peaceful, more secure, and stop imperialism. Imperialism is going to disappear this century. But we have to be intelligent and we have to be united in the strategy to confront the last years of this monster that is dying.
I hope so too. And just one last question, Your Excellency. In terms of the gold that was stolen by the Bank of England, we had another court case last month where, they're still trying to decide who the owner of the gold is, allegedly. Do you have any news regarding that? Do you have any updates about this? Because we don't hear anything in the press.
No, it's an absurd case, because that gold belongs to the Central Bank of Venezuela. It's part of our international reserves. And suddenly the Bank of England decided that they wouldn't give it back to Venezuela when we needed it. We asked for this gold at the beginning of this year, when the pandemic was just beginning, and we knew that we were going to need these funds. We even at some point said, okay, don't give it to us, because now you said you don't know if it if the president of Venezuela is Maduro or some other fellow. So give it to the UNDP of the United Nations, and we will try to coordinate with them and buy what we need in coordination with them. And they also denied to do this, and this went to a trial, and it's the first judge of the first instance said that the gold belonged to Guaidó. In the next instance of appealing, they said that no, this is not clear. So now we're going to a third part. It is absolutely absurd. It's really regretful and outrageous that the justice of a so-called civilized country, like the United Kingdom, is playing with the lives of the Venezuelans, because this goal was to stop the pandemic. We have a good strategy. We have controlled the pandemic, but I am sure that if we had this other $2,000 million, we could have even better figures and less Venezuelans would have died, and our health system would be much more stronger. So it's in their conscience. They take these decisions, people die, so we just have to keep on struggling and fighting until this all becomes a bad memory, and we can advance freely and with liberty.
I mean, I was in the city of London, specifically where the Bank of England is actually located, and I was covering the Julian Assange hearing. And I mean, this so-called justice system it's an imperialist construct. It's shameful, really. Your Excellency, I'm really grateful for your time and for coming on the show. It's truly an honor and a privilege to host you. Thank you so much.
Thank you and regards. And we are also paying attention to what happens in Syria, our brothers and sisters of Syria, and what happens in the Middle East. It's part of the struggles and the fight of the peoples of the world. Thank you.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.